And I'm back again, this time with another Christmas movie. This is probably my favorite Christmas movie, although it's not totally a Christmas movie. Um, this movie was made 70 years ago in 1946, and supposedly it was filmed during one of the hottest summers on record in New York. But all the snow that is in this movie is real. They had snow machines going day and night to try to keep the snow on the ground as much as they could. The movie is It's a Wonderful Life, directed by Frank Capra, starring James Stewart and Donna Reed. It also stars Lyle Barrymore as Old Man Potter. Um, this particular DVD has both the colorized version and black and white version, as you can see. Honestly, with colorization, it doesn't really bother me. I know some people have a fit when they see something that's supposed to be in black and white being shown in color. But the colorized process on this movie is pretty good. I only have it in black and white on Vudu, but it's a really good movie. It was released by Liberty Films and I think fell into public domain because either somebody didn't renew the copyright on it or it didn't display a copyright notice. I'm not exactly sure. So for years and years, there were many VHSs of this running around and a few DVDs. Um, Eventually, Republic Pictures through Lionsgate picked up the movie and put out an official release with some bonus material on it. And this particular release is from Paramount. See, Paramount DVD. It's exactly the same as the Republic Pictures release of the movie. The only bonus features are the making of It's a Wonderful Life and Frank Capra Jr. remembering what it was like filming this. That's when he said that it was one of the hottest summers on record that he knew of. The film I've watched, I don't know, numerous times. First time I ever watched it was in art class around the holidays. The teacher, it was her favorite movie, so she wanted to share it with her students. And while the movie was in public domain, why not? So I watched it then for the first time, and I've watched it every year since. That was probably back in 89 or 90. I know I'd seen it a couple times before then, but it wasn't really a staple at Christmas time for me like it became after that. I made sure to watch it every single year and haven't missed a year since then. So I have seen this movie many times. Said it was made in 1946, which makes this movie 70 years old this year, 2016. And it was directed by Frank Capra. Frank Capra. And it basically tells the story of a man. He wants to go out exploring the world. He's saved all his money from working at the drugstore, doing this and that, working at his father's building and loan, the Bailey Brothers building and loan. And he saved a lot of money and he wants to go out exploring. And then he wants to come back, go to college, and then figure out what he wants to do with his life. Well, a tragic event occurs right before graduation of his brother from high school that year. His father, who runs the building and loan with his father's brother. I think his father's name's Peter Bailey. And his brother, I can't remember, but he's in the movie a lot. He's a goofy guy. He's all the time tying strings around his fingers to remember things that he always forgets. But his father, James Stewart's father, passes away. And this leaves James Stewart's character out in the cold, so to speak. His name's George Bailey. And there was this young girl when he worked back at the drugstore. She liked him, so she ordered some chocolate ice cream. And he asked her if she wanted coconut on it. She said she don't like coconut. Well, he commences to call her stupid and stuff because coconuts come from tropical climates, and that he's been nominated for membership in the National Geographic Society because, like I said, he's wanting to go exploring when he grows up. And regardless of that, she falls in love with him. She's a little bit younger than he is. I think she graduates about the time his younger brother graduates from high school. And they meet up later that night, and then that's when he gets the bad news that his father had a stroke and passed away. Then it picks up a few months later, and George is finally fixing to leave to go exploring like he wants to. But the board is trying to decide whether the Bailey Brothers Building and Loan even needs to exist anymore because Potter owns the bank in the town. So he says that the institution's no longer needed. And he gets a second to just vote it out of business. And George makes a pretty good speech telling everybody why they needed to keep the place. Because it's important. And then he says, y'all do what you want to do. I'm going. And his uncle comes out with him. And he's like, George asks, well, what's going on back there? And he's like, well, they're just voting us out of business after 35 years or however long it's been. And they come rushing out and said they voted Potter down. They want to keep it going. And George is like, well, that's good. And his uncle's name is Billy. I just remembered that. But they want George to take over as the running of the business, which means he wouldn't be able to leave and go exploring like he wants to. So he does decide to stay. Not only that, he gives the money that he saved up to his brother Harry so that he can go to college. And then when Harry gets done with college, he'll come back and then George can go out exploring. Well, he tells him that Uncle Billy's the one that should take over the business. And they're like, well, Billy can stay. You can hire anyone you want. But they want you to run the place. And he says, well, I'm not going to. I'm about to leave for my trip. He starts to head out the door, and they're like, they're going to vote with Potter otherwise. So he did decide to stay and give his money to Harry for him to go to college. Now, after this, um, Harry goes to college for, I guess, like 4 years. And when he comes back home, he's got another surprise for him. He got married. And his new bride's father offered him a job in the plastics industry, I believe. And it's a really good job, so George can't take it away from him. So he just basically stays on at the building and loan. And then his Uncle Billy loses, seems like it was $5,000 or $8,000. I can't remember. It was a lot of money, but George has a life insurance policy. I believe it's paid out to his family in the amount of $10,000. So he goes out to the bridge and is going to jump off so that they would get the insurance money and they'd be all right because they can't find this money anywhere. Well, an angel, this how the movie starts anyway. Angels up in heaven talking. They said a lot of people asking for help for a man named George Bailey. And so they send someone down. His name's Clarence. And in order to keep George from jumping off into the river, he jumps off into the river himself. And then George has to jump into the river to save him. That to me seemed kind of silly because George was going to jump into the river to kill himself, but Clarence jumped into the river first, so George would have to save him and jump in the river to save him. I don't really see what the difference is. He jumped in the river either way. I guess since he had a purpose in jumping into the river that it worked out, he didn't go through with suicide. But throughout talking to Clarence, he decides that the world would have been better off without him and he wished he'd never been born. And then Clarence makes a deal to make it to where he's never been born and he starts seeing all these strange things. And he realizes how truly wonderful his life was. And that one man's life touches so many other lives. Kind of harkens back to a movie I reviewed this weekend called Run Lola Run, in which certain decisions you make change the course of your life. In this case, George Bailey, if he had never been born, a lot of people were a lot worse off. I mean, the town they lived in, Bedford Falls, became Pottersville, and it was a haven for lowlifes and scum, really. And his mother, she was by herself because his brother broke through the ice and drowned. Now, they did make a goof in the movie. If you look at the gravestone for Harry Bailey in the graveyard in the George Never Been Born scenario of this movie, the gravestone says, I believe, 1909 to 1919 was how long he lived. No, it was 1911 to 1919. That's right. And it said he broke through the ice and was drowned at the age of 9. There's no way he could have been 9 years old if those were the dates on the gravestone. 1911 to 1919, he couldn't have been but 7, maybe 8, depending on what month he was born. But when that happened at the beginning of the movie, George, of course, saved his life. So that worked out good because later on, when World War II hit, or World War I, Well, actually, it might have been World War II. I guess it was World War II because, yeah, they talked about VE Day and VJ Day. Harry joined the military and shot down a bunch of Japanese fighters to them as they were about to crash into U.S. ships. But all the men on the transports died because Harry wasn't there to save them because George wasn't there to save Harry when he was a kid. So, I mean, there's a lot to this movie, and I do highly recommend it. I'm sure a lot of people watching this have seen it before. If you haven't, check it out. Whether you watch it in color or black and white really doesn't matter. It's a really good movie either way. I highly recommend it. But that's George. That's his wife Mary. That's one of his daughters. And that's his daughter Zuzu. She's the one that triggers George on his little rampage later on in the movie. That's the angel Clarence. That's George and Zuzu. That's George and Mary. That's George on the phone, which was another blooper that actually made it into the movie. George comes into the building and loan right after Billy lost the money. What actually happened was Billy was supposed to deposit the money, but he saw Potter right before he walked up to the counter to deposit the cash, and he grabbed the newspaper out of Potter's hand and it had the story about Harry Bailey saving all the people on that transport. And whenever he folded the paper back up, he put the envelope with the money back in there and handed it back to Potter. Didn't even realize he had done it, I guess. Kind of stupidity on his part. But, yeah. That's how he lost the money, and Potter wasn't about to give it back to him because he saw this as a way of finally ending the building and loan. But the blooper came because whenever George walked back in there, this was before Billy came back, he was carrying a Christmas wreath on his arm. And it was sort of draped over his arm. And the first thing he done was took it off his arm, laid it on the desk. And they told him Harry was on the phone, so he picked up the phone to start talking to Harry, but there was the wreath still on his arm, even though he had just set it down on the desk. You can look for that too, but that's just a minor flaw. I mean, there's lots bigger flaws than that in major motion pictures. I would say that this was probably a fairly low budget movie. It wasn't very popular at the time when it was released. It gained its popularity through the years, and now it's become pretty much a staple at Christmas time. Lots of folks watch this movie. But, yeah, it's a 2-disc set. This is actually the insert from the original DVD that I had. It has one of those spoiler-filled chapter lists. But this is from the Republic Pictures DVD. I just put it in here because the chapters all match up. So, and as you can see, it's 2-disc set. That's the color version. That's black and white version. I think the color version, all it has on it's the movie. The black and white version, they put the 2 little bonus features on it. But other than that, I would highly recommend that movie. And I will see you on the next movie review. Throw me a thumbs up if you like this video. If you don't, you can give it a dislike. Leave me a comment. Tell me what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and I will see you on the next one.